All right, team. Welcome back. I'm going to make this video. Forgive my energy level. Going to be a little bit low energy Jeb for this one. So we'll just kind of go through and talk about, recap some of these picks and games from the weekend. I was at a wedding over the weekend and a lot of traveling, so I was trying to catch up with all the action and highlights over the weekend. So I didn't get to watch the games live, but I was checking in and looking at the recaps and again the highlights of all 16 games. I think I got to see all 16 games. But getting into it, um, you'll see how we did overall at the end of the video here, but we're going to go game by game and sort of see how we did. And it's a mixed bag. It's definitely a mixed result for our first time sort of putting these kinds of picks out there. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. So we had the Browns, excuse me, Giants versus the Browns, and I had the Giants covering the spread. That was a -6.5 on the game, and we were correct about that. The idea was that the Giants are a little bit better than we suspect, and the Browns are a little bit worse than we suspect. At the end of the day, the Giants end up winning that one. Good for us. Good for New York. That is my team at the end of the day. Mm, So I guess I had the read on that one, and I was pretty much right. The Giants did almost blow it at the end, but they were not really, except for the opening few minutes where they were instantly down by 7 points because of a fumble. And but yeah, we were feeling good about that one, and that ended up being correct. So good pat on the back for that one. Moving on, after this, it is pretty much all downhill. So. We had actually the Bucks in our survivor pool, so we got blasted out of the water on that one. This was a game where the Bucks just never showed up, and the Broncos were feeling some type of spicy way. Bo Nix out to shock the world and prove the haters wrong, and he seemingly was able to go up and down the field at will, basically until they took their foot off the gas. And yeah, the Bucks just never in that one. After a really stellar couple of weeks, they were looking like a wagon, and maybe they will sort of regress back to the mean at this point. It's kind of hard to sort of figure out what happened in that game. Um, maybe the Broncos will end up being an average team, and the Bucks will end up being an average team. And this is one where, the Buccaneers were coming off of a high, and maybe they didn't take their opponent that seriously. I think that was kind of maybe a theme for this week, to be honest. Sort of teams that were expected to do really phenomenally well, and the null hypothesis, the opposite effect coming through. So we were absolutely wrong on that one. I will take the heat for that. Um, but again, this was sort of a strange week in the NFL. Some strange outcomes. We had next the Chargers versus the Steelers. That was billed to be a low scoring game. I thought it would be a low scoring game, so we were right on that. I said I was not confident in my pick taking the Chargers 13 to the Steelers 10. I thought just talent wise they would be able to pull it out. It seems like Justin Herbert is sort of falling apart in sort of the middle of his career, early middle of his career. Very concerning for Chargers fans, to say the least. Steelers once again finding a way to get the win. They have a absolutely stellar defense as usual, and now the offense with a talented quarterback like Justin Fields, who looks like he's having a bit of a revival there. So Steelers 3-0, continuing to roll, and not an easy victory, but they were able to handle the Chargers fairly well. I was wrong, generally with the pick, but I feel slightly vindicated by pretty much the general vibe of that game turning out the way it did. Another game where I was sort of right in terms of the overall identity of what this game would look like, and sort of an odd low score coming out of that. Chicago really should have won this game. There were multiple opportunities where they had picked off Anthony Richardson in the end zone, and then they went down and they had got stopped on the 1 yard line of on their way into the end zone. Just again, a sloppy game from Chicago. The coaching situation there is really leaving a lot to be desired. I don't think that Eberflus is really cut out for the head coaching world. I think he should probably regress back to the D coordinator role. Um, and they need a new, young leader in Chicago to really take that thing over. Caleb Williams, having some good and bad moments. He's having his sort of development season. I think it's fine. People are freaking out that he's a bust or whatever. It's way too early to say he's a bust. I don't think he's a bust. I think he will eventually figure it out. Again, I think it's a coaching situation more than anything. Indianapolis ending up getting the win, a close one. But again, we were, wrong about the overall result there, and the result is the result. Moving on. Packers versus the Titans. Again, I thought my perception of Malik Willis is just from what I remember from the Titans, where he was really just inept. And I remember him having like these games where he would have 25 or 30 pass attempts for like 60 yards passing. I just thought he was completely inept as a passer, and he was not able to really put a functional, offensive series together. Well, he looked dynamic. He was running the option. He looked absolutely in control of that offense. Whereas Will Levis on the Titans continues to show an ineptitude and sort of a lack of control, and always trying to do too much, where maybe it just doesn't translate to the NFL level. And um, yeah, maybe the Titans feeling a little bit upset that they let someone as dynamic as Malik Willis go so early, and now they are sort of saddled with who was supposed to be the replacement, but really looking like more of a backup, maybe somebody who's on that Drew Lock tier of quarterback. Maybe like a Drew Lock meets Tim Tebow sort of a situation. Um, and yeah, so that's again, I was completely wrong. I thought that the Packers wouldn't be able to put it together offensively against the Titans defense, and that they would be able to have get Will Levis on track. I was completely wrong. Packers, uh, just a really solid team, put it together and annihilated the Titans. And that story continues. All right. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the New Orleans Saints. Um, this is one where I was just wrong on all fronts. I thought this was going to be a high scoring shootout. This turned into be a defensive struggle with Philadelphia coming out at the end, pretty much on the riding the back of Saquon Barkley there in the fourth quarter. Um, I don't know. My read on this is that probably Philly and New Orleans are just average teams, and average met average, and sort of the average, regressed to the average, if that makes sense. I think New Orleans is not as good as people think based on their first couple of weeks' performance. Maybe they come out and win 10 games this season or so. That's very realistic to think. But I'm not a believer in Derek Carr as a long-term option. The defense is pretty good. Um, but yeah, I'm just not. I think they're a little bit better than they were last year, which is why they'll probably win like 10 games this year. I still don't have any confidence in Nick Sirianni leading Philly to any sort of, promised land anytime soon, whether it's this year, next year, or then the year after. But excellent stuff out of Saquon Barkley, really the saving grace of the early season so far for Philly, with AJ Brown being out, and now another injury to Devonta Smith, really sort of horrific, but glad he's okay. Okay. This game, I don't feel bad about because I think everybody got this one wrong. Houston was favored by 2 points. They end up getting absolutely blown to pieces by the Vikings. Maybe people aren't taking the Vikings seriously, and Sam Darnold is just shocking the haters left and right. Again, the Vikings have an excellent defense, and that showed in this one, and they have an offense that with Sam Darnold, somehow they are just going up and down the field. They started out early and often. They got off to a magnificent lead, and they just kept hammering it. Texans not able to really get into this game at all. There is something to be said about the Stefon Diggs effect, and that goes hand in hand with what you saw on the other end with Buffalo completely blowing the Jaguars to pieces, and we'll get to that. That's one where we actually were pretty on the money with. It seems like I don't want to use the term, people say, oh, he's a cancer, he's this and that. I think that's a strong word, but there's something to be said about a certain player that just throws the dynamic and the balance off of a locker room or a receiver room or an offensive, backfield or huddle. maybe Stefan Diggs is, for all the talent that he used to have, again, I think he's now on the back end of a career. We saw him slow down at the end of last season, and we saw that as well with Dalvin Cook. When that happens, it really happens. So is he just not bringing any offensive spark and just dragging the rest of the team down in one way or another? Possibly. So really unfortunate to see that with the Texans. They go from looking like Super Bowl favorite to really falling back to the middle of the pack in one fell swoop. They have a lot of work to do to get that right. This was another one that blew up a lot of people's survivor pools. I did warn that we would see a revitalized resurgence, with the offense here with the Panthers. I just could never have expected it would be as magnificent as we thought. You put a slightly competent quarterback in that huddle with Xavier Legette and two above average running backs in Hubbard and Miles Sanders. And then you had Deontay Johnson absolutely going off for over 100 yards and a bunch of catches. And Andy Dalton just ripping the really solid Raiders defense to pieces. Maybe they were kind of asleep at the wheel and not expecting this sort of shock and awe from the Red Rifle or the Red Rocket or however you want to call them. But it also just highlights, unfortunately, how bad, and it's only one performance, so we have to give it some time to see how this evolves. But Bryce Young is bad. Bryce Young is, I was skeptical of him as the number one pick coming out. I didn't see the level of talent, superior talent to justify it. He looked, like a pretty normal quarterback to me, and undersized at that. And he looks like a deer in the headlights out there, or has looked, and he just doesn't do anything. So you get a quarterback that actually runs the offense and has like masterful control over it, and you see the result. Panthers absolutely demolishing the Raiders. I think they'll bounce back. This was just again a sort of a shock and awe. They weren't expecting this, and it really showed. There was some garbage time score at the end there, so this was actually worse than it looks. Um, but yes, moving onwards. Now we'll get to the stretch where I actually did fairly well. So Miami versus Seattle, Miami without a quarterback, and Seattle with their, normal sort of above average team that they've seemingly put together every year for the last like 3 years. This outcome was pretty much as expected. Miami 3, Seattle 24. Not so much different margin than I had here. This was a 21-point margin. I had predicted like a 13, no, 23 point, no, 13. I can't do math. Anyway, not much to say about that. That game went like exactly as I expected. So I feel pretty good about that one. This game was going how we expected for a while, and then the Los Angeles Rams, mounting an absolutely stunning comeback. The lack of offensive weapons on the San Francisco 49ers starting to show through, where they're not able to continue their offensive onslaught and really let the Rams back into this game. Safe to say that as long as Matthew Stafford is on the field, that you cannot count out the LA Rams. We were talking about his injury troubles when we were making this prediction. Well, apparently he's not that badly injured, so that he is still able to play. And as long as Matthew Stafford is on the field, do not count out his team, especially the Los Angeles Rams with the excellent coaching that they have behind them. So chalk that up again to the laundry list of players, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, to name a few, that San Francisco is missing, and Matthew Stafford, say less. Okay. This game, we predicted a shootout. I thought it was heading in that direction. We had 30 points in the first half, and we were heading towards blowing out that over under. If you took the live under, good for you, because there were only 3 points scored in the second half. It looked like a lot of creativity and dynamism in the first half that sort of got used up by the time that was over. Defenses adjusted, and then things grinded to an absolute halt. Lions jumping out to their lead 20-10 and just holding on for the rest of that one. That's not so different than what we were expecting in terms of the outcome for the winner. But it would have been nice to see that shootout continue into the second half, but it is what it is. Ravens versus Cowboys. The Cowboys continuing their slide into sort of the average of the pack. Ravens absolutely needing to win this one. They jumped out to a massive lead. It was like 28-3 or something, 28-6 at one point. They ended up letting the Cowboys back in the game. There was an onside kick recovery at one point. A lot of infighting going on the Cowboys side. They have no running back, as we talked about. They figured that signing, Ezekiel Elliott with no wheels and jeans would be enough to fill in the backfield there. It's not. It's not going to do the trick. They needed to do something. Actually, the Ravens signed the player that they should have signed in Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry absolutely destroyed them in that game. This should not have been as close as it was. But again, at the end of the day, it came in close with my margin of the prediction. Ravens coming out and winning that one as we had expected, and look for the Cowboys and the Giants next week. That'll be a tough one to predict. Okay. Another game that I was pretty spot on with, the Chiefs, didn't play their best football at all, and the Falcons did their thing. Falcons have a solid offense, with pieces pretty much everywhere. They've got a above average quarterback. They've got an excellent all-star running back, top dog receiver, good tight end, solid offensive line, solid defense. Everything just solid, but just nothing, super impressive. The Chiefs, even not playing their best game, were able to gut it out and grit it out. Even though the Falcons had some chances at the end there to go ahead, the Chiefs, did their thing. They got the stops when they needed to, and they ended up winning the game with a 5-point margin. Not so different than how we expected this to play out, given the talent on the field. Another game where I feel pretty good about the prediction. Although I was just not as confident as I should have been with the Bills. I predicted they would put up a lot of points. They end up blowing the Jaguars into smithereens. And the Jaguars really in a tough place here. They have regressed certainly this season. Trevor Lawrence starting to bring out a lot of questions as to whether or not he is truly the future of the franchise, even though they just paid him millions and millions of dollars, like 45 or $50 million a year. Again, like I said, Josh Allen on a mission this year. They get rid of Stephon Diggs, and everyone says, "Oh my goodness, how are they going to figure it out?" Well, you still have Josh Allen. They draft an excellent rookie receiver. They have Khalil Shakir and James Cook and some other solid offensive weapons, Dalton Kincaid, to name a few. So the Bills are going to be just fine. And they proved that last night with just a completely dominating victory that you could have turned off at halftime. A game that you definitely couldn't turn off at halftime was this Commanders and Bengals game. I wish I was able to watch this. I got to catch a little bit of it on the plane last night. The woman next to me had it loaded up on her phone for a minute. She turned it off for some reason. I don't know why, but I was enjoying it for the 5 minutes that she had it on there. And I will just tell you that, like I said, Jayden Daniels, and I've been saying it since he was coming out in college. I was watching him. I was doing my scouting because I figured the Giants were going to be around to pick either a quarterback or Malik Nabers. And I'm glad that we took Malik Nabers. I should have mentioned that earlier, but he's an absolute stud of studs. But that's neither here nor there at this point. I did not think the Commanders would be able to win this game. The Bengals also with their offense putting it together, the way that they had to, just leaving a lot to be desired on defense, getting really just shocked and awed by this young Jayden Daniels. People don't know how to deal with him. He's got a massive, monster precision arm, like a Tom Brady or not to really like make these crazy comparisons, but he's got the arm talent, the precision, and then he runs like a freaking gazelle. He's just got to learn how to take care of himself, which so far, knock on wood, he's done a pretty good job of. But yeah, just a freaking stellar all-around performance by Jayden Daniels. Kid's an absolute stud. I can't say enough about that, and it sucks that he's in the Giants division, but fun to watch. They end up holding on and beating the Bengals really in kind of like championship fashion with just, hanging in and taking massive hits, converting when they need to convert, throwing for touchdowns, not taking their foot off the gas and putting the Bengals away. A team that again is what are they, 0-3 at this point? That I expect somehow to finish still like 14-3, because that's just how the Bengals are. and they somehow always figure it out. So no worries there if you're a Bengals fan. Don't stress. You guys will be fine. So those were my picks, and a little bit of a recap. Again, I wish I had gotten to watch these games. I did not do any betting on these games. I don't recommend betting. These are just, sort of my ideas, and I want to go and, sort of test my thoughts and see how I sort of see things, if I'm seeing things clearly or not. But overall on this week, in terms of, spreads, I was 7 out of 16, which is pretty piss poor, not even getting to 50% there. If you look at the point totals that I predicted, um, I was 8 out of 16 on those, so 50%. It could have been worse. I didn't go full Hawk Tua and go 0 for 8 on my picks, which is it's good. We're good. We're happy about that. But we definitely need to do improve on this massively. This is not where we need to be at all. Um, that being said, I think this was one of the craziest, most unpredictable weeks, definitely in this early part of the season, and maybe in, several weeks going back a few seasons. This week was just absolutely insane, with not just the upsets, but the margins of the upsets. Looking at the Panthers destroying the Raiders, who just beat the Ravens, who was one of the best teams in NFL history. So, again, not you can't really make those comparisons, but that's the reality. Texans getting dismantled by the Vikings, who coming into the season nobody was even talking about. Um, the Packers without their $50 million a year quarterback still somehow putting together these massive wins. Um, Among more, the Bucks just coming off of a massive win against the NFC title game contenders last year, beating them in a stellar comeback, and then losing to the dilapidated Broncos with Bo Nix. So not making excuses, but just pointing out the reality that you never know what to expect any given Sunday. And that's why we love the NFL, and it's an exciting time to be a fan. So that's my recap for the week. Those are my thoughts on an absolutely insane week of football. We will make some new picks for the upcoming week, and we will try to improve on that last performance with some lessons learned moving forward. Let me know if you guys have any comments, and let me know how you guys did it with your picks, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.